Aaron, I don't see a bloody thing.
Come on, I'll help you. Here we go, here we go. You good?
Yeah, that's all right.
Get that man on stage.
Who are these people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spectateur, Monsieur, Dame, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, ambassadors, presidents, boyfriends and girlfriends. Welcome to the Theater of Absurd. Tonight, we will have a very special show that happens only once in the history of water resources management.
Ever.
Only once.
And that will be
Ever.
devoted to cooperation, or rather, the absurdities of cooperation. By the way, this is my precautionary principle applied. No rain, no flood, no job. So just to be on the safe side, I have this with me this afternoon. So we will cover a wide range of issues, starting from how to organize your love life, ending up with the Nash equilibrium, multi-objective optimization, the psychology of decision-making, conflicts. We will have all sorts of interesting shows, from prisoners to ministers, and perhaps in the reverse order as well. My name is András something. I'm currently the professor of sarcastic hydrology, and at the same time function as a rector magnificus, and this is my gown that clearly shows that one. This is a great honor to introduce my fellow clowns on the, fellow moderators on the stage, Aaron and Fred. And perhaps you would like to go ahead and further introducing yourself, please.
You were going to mention something about the murderer, no, Professor Shalosinagi?
Oh, I forget it. There's going to be no killing. Please.
But it would be nice to know who the murderer is.
Would be.
It would be. What murderer, one might be asking? Well, I'm Aaron Wolf. I'm a professor, a distinguished professor at Oregon State University.
Very distinguished, as you can see from the mustache. We were so afraid and so jealous of Fred. He was born with a mustache, so we had to make one.
So tonight, the theater of the absurd is defined as a situation in which characters are caught in hopeless situations to do repetitive or meaningless actions, somewhat like being a professor. The dialogue is full of cliches, wordplay, nonsense, and plots that are cyclical or absurdly expansive. For me, the theater of the absurd is a perfect metaphor for illustrating the kind of protective fence we often build around ourselves at any time it comes to sharing commons or trusting each other or making decisions that will impact management and the ability. This is a prisoner's dilemma.
You're glued.
It is. My question is, are we destined to play in such an endless and grotesque reality show, or can we change the way we think and actually interact with each other? Fred?
Good questions all. My name is Fred Pierce. I'm an environment journalist. You might ask why I'm here. What's a journalist doing here? I should be out there taking notes or something. I guess when they came up with the phrase the theatre of the absurd, they thought of me first, but I'll live with that. I'm interested, seriously, in seeing whether we can find a happy ending to this tragedy, the tragedy of the commons. And I seriously think that in the next few minutes we'll go a little way towards that. Or at least in finding a starting point which would allow us to move towards our desired happy endings, and we all like happy endings. So can we find a way to manage the commons, the global commons, the local commons, whether they're pastures or whether they're rivers and groundwaters, or even the atmosphere? That's a kind of global commons now. Can we prevent free riders from doing all the stuff that we don't want them to do? But how do we manage something which is collectively owned? Is privatization the only way? Some people say that. Or can our social side triumph? Can we be social beings? Those are the kind of things that I want to answer tonight. And that's us.
And that's
Wait
you,
a second.
We go off and you stay on.
We should get lost. Now, this is your show. Bye.
as a professor, what I thought we'd do from here, I speak basically in 50-minute blocks. I've got an 87-point PowerPoint, 5-point font, and what I'll do is I'll just read you each slide with my... No, I'm serious. Fair enough. Okay. So the tension between conflict and cooperation is ever present in our lives. How many people have been involved in some kind of conflict? How many people are involved in a relationship? We're constantly wavering between conflict and cooperation, between giving a helping hand to our colleagues, while at the same time trying to advance ourselves, between paying for a bus ticket and getting a free ride. As for superpowers, talking about the arms race, let's not even go there. Beginning with Darwin, we're all convinced that evolution is all about competition, that it's a dog-eat-dog world. But what if that it wasn't the best strategy after all? What if we could manage and reach our optimum goals while doing what's right for the community at the same time? This first act is about the way we interact with each other, about taking decisions and trusting each other. Why is it that we don't cooperate with each other in many of the situations we find ourselves in everyday life, even though it would make total sense? And if we apply this same question to water resources, why is it so difficult to manage a shared resource and resist the demons of defection that are lurking around every corner? And when I say shared, I'm not just talking about transboundary waters, all the waters that we share between ourselves as individuals and stakeholders. And in a transboundary context, for example, we know that a cooperative approach, sharing information on a lake or an aquifer in a basin, will improve our governance and possibly provide greater benefits for the riparians concerned. The problem is, we're tempted not to do so. There's a very popular game that demonstrates perfectly this tension between conflict and cooperation. Some of you may know it already. Let's see what happens. So here's the dilemma. They've been caught. They can't talk to each other. If they cooperate, if they both keep quiet, they get 6 months. If one of them defects, the person who defects get off, the other gets 10 years. If they both defect, they both get 5 years. what would they do? Let's see what's going on inside their minds.
Obviously, I don't want to stay in here. I need a plan. I've got to get out of here. MacGyver always has a plan. Why don't I have a plan? Come on. So, the plan is I've got to minimize my time in here. And come what may, I've got to avoid the worst possible scenario for me. So what are my options? Think. Okay, I could turn her in. I didn't do it. She did it. And if she doesn't turn me in, and I'm sure she won't, then I get to walk away free. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But wait, what if she does? Then we'll both end up in here for 5 whole years. Wow. Don't think I could do that. Hang on. What if I don't turn her in and she does? Hang on. If I don't turn her in and she does, then I'll be the sucker staying in here for 10 whole years. Mamma mia. Don't think I could do that. How on earth can I trust what she's going to do?
Now remember, the prosecutor's given them both the same chance at the deal, and they can't talk to each other. What's going on inside Amon's mind?
Well, you know what? Tom has always been a good partner to me.
I think we should hear that again.
Tom has always been a good partner to me. And he's really loyal. I'm sure he'll never turn me in. It's true turning him in does optimize my benefits. But if we both keep quiet, then we'll only get 2 years each.
Wait, Amon, we're not hearing inside your mind very well. No, let's just concentrate a little bit harder. We'll all concentrate together, everybody in the room. Focus. Here, why don't you tell me what you're thinking?
I'll tell you. I find it difficult to believe that Tom will turn me in. He's always been a good partner to me, and he's really loyal. It's true, turning him in does optimize my benefits. But if we both keep quiet, then we'll only get 2 years each. And Tom's smart. He'll come to the same conclusion as me, I'm sure. Cooperation is the best deal for both of us. You know what? I'm going to keep quiet. It's the best possible option.
Well, I'm tempted to trust her. I mean, obviously, if I don't say anything, she doesn't say anything, we'll both end up with a great situation. We'll get out of here in 6 months' time. Great. But if I don't say anything and she turns me in, I'll be in here for 10 whole years. And I'll be paying for my own naivety. Talking about risk management, all the business people. I've got a business background. I can't take that risk. Give me the papers, give me the pen. I'm going to have to turn her in. Sorry, got no choice. Give it to me.
I'm really positive. Tom will think like me. He's never turned me in before. In any case, they have not enough evidence. They can't give us a longer sentence if we both remain silent and deny the crime. So I'm not signing the papers. But what if he does turn me in? Then I'm in a big trouble. 10 years is way too long. I can't take that risk. And what if I'm wrong about him? What if it's all my imagination and he is yet just another selfish man? I would have to turn him in. I've got no choice.
You've got no choice. Ladies and gentlemen, what you've just witnessed is the most common outcome for this game. It's called the dominance strategy. The downside is that both players think alike, so the ultimate decision leaves both of them worse off than had they both cooperated. Had they cooperated, they wouldn't have got the best individual outcome for sure, but they would have both gotten the second best outcome. Clearly, this is still a better result than had they both turned each other in, as they did. Experts from a wide range of disciplines, economists, political scientists, policy analysis, have tried to analyze this dilemma, and several theories have emerged. One of the most famous is the Nash equilibrium. Instead of trying to describe it to you myself, because I haven't fully understood it, I'll leave it up to the magic of cinema to tell the story.
Nash, you might want to stop shuffling your papers for 5 seconds.
I will not buy you gentlemen beer.
Oh, we're not here for beer, my friend.
Oh. Does anyone else feel she should be moving in slow motion?
Will she want a large wedding, you think?
Should we say swords, gentlemen? Pistols at dawn?
Have you remembered nothing? Recall the lessons of Adam Smith, father of modern economics.
In competition, individual ambition serves the common good.
Exactly.
Every man for himself, gentlemen.
And those who strike out are stuck with their friends.
I'm not going to strike out.
You can lead a blonde to water, but you can't make her drink.
I don't think he said that.
All right, nobody move. She's looking over here. Right, she's looking at Nash.
Oh, God. All right, he may have the upper hand now, but wait until he opens his mouth. Remember the last time?
Oh, yes, that was one for the history books.
Adam Smith needs revision.
What are you talking about?
If we all go for the blonde, we block each other. Not a single one of us is going to get her. So then we go for her friends. But they will all give us the cold shoulder because nobody likes to be second choice. But what if no one goes for the blonde? We don't get in each other's way, and we don't insult the other girls. That's the only way we win. That's the only way we all get laid. Adam Smith said, the best result comes from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself, right? That's what he said, that's right? Incomplete. Incomplete. Okay? Because the best result would come from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself and the group.
Ash, this is some way for you to get the blonde on your own. You can go to hell.
Governing dynamics, gentlemen. Governing dynamics. Adam Smith. Who's wrong?
Yep, there we go. Careful, careful.
Thank you.
I don't know how you get out of this. I know economics is looking better and better, right? So having listened to these conversations, you might well have the impression that choosing to cooperate with each other is a strategy of the weak. But is that really the case? I'd like to put this question to Mr. David Rand, professor of psychology and economics at Yale University.
When you think about the prisoner's dilemma, it really does seem like cooperation is a foolish and weak strategy. No matter what the other person does, you should always defect. That's what's always going to earn you the most money. And so that defection is clearly the winning strategy. And that paints a very grim picture for us thinking about social dilemmas in the world. But that view is really incomplete, and it's missing some key components that really change the equation. In the prisoner's dilemma, the two people have just a single one-off interaction. They only meet once. They never see each other again. They don't know anything about each other or about their past behavior. And so there is no incentive to cooperate. And that's what's captured by the prisoner's dilemma. But when you think about real social dilemmas that happen in our lives and in the world, the situation is very different. And in most cases, it really is actually the case that cooperation is the winning strategy and that nice guys really do finish first. So cooperation isn't a weak or foolish strategy in the world. In our lives, most of the time, that really is the advantageous thing to do.
But what incentives are there to cooperate? How can these theories actually be used to promote cooperation in the real world?
The incentives that make cooperation actually a winning strategy, for the most part, have to do with reciprocity, or the concept of future consequences for present actions. So if you imagine, instead of just being a one-off anonymous interaction, say that two people interact repeatedly, then what I do today will affect how you behave towards me tomorrow. So it becomes worth it to pay the cost of cooperation in order to earn the benefit of your partner cooperating with you in the future. Or imagine that we only interact once, but that other people are watching, so it's not anonymous. So if I help you, then I'll get a reputation as being a good, helpful person, and if I defect, then I'll get a reputation for being a bad person. And so again, it becomes worth paying the cost of cooperating today in order to earn the benefits that a good reputation will get you in the future. Or similarly, imagine that you're part of a social network, not like Facebook or MySpace, but like your actual real-life network of the people that you are friends with, the people that you work with, the people that you interact with. In that case, which is true, that if you're selfish, then people won't want to be your friends. If you defect, then you will get isolated from the social network and ostracized, whereas if you're cooperative, then you'll gain social capital. So there are a lot of these different, what we call mechanisms for the evolution or maintenance of cooperation that make it actually in your long-term self-interest much of the time to be cooperative. And so because of this, most people wind up internalizing cooperation as their default response. And we have various experiments that show these sort of cooperative intuitions. And all of this theory work and these experiments can be used to actually really affect change in the world. For example, we have one experiment in which we worked with a utility company in the United States to try and motivate people to sign up for a blackout prevention program. They allowed the utility company to turn their air conditioner down a couple of degrees during peak usage days to prevent blackouts. And we showed that making it so that people's neighbors could see whether they had signed up or not dramatically increased signups. It like tripled the number of people agreeing to be in the program, and was much more effective than a cash incentive. And so by taking advantage of people's concerns about their reputations and the way that others perceive their actions, you can really get people to be much more willing to behave in a pro-social way. So by making water usage, electricity usage, these kind of things more transparent, more publicly available, that information, it creates an incentive for people to be cooperative. And it also works at a bigger level, like for corporations. If you make their water usage or any sort of waste statistics publicly available and easy for people to find, then it puts that information out into the world, and it really creates an incentive to be a good citizen and to be a good global citizen, because there will be reputational consequences if you don't.
So, cooperation is more useful than conflict. Who'd have thought? Thank you very much. Come.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Act 2 of the game that is coming this afternoon. Demystifying the myths and stereotypes is going to be the subject we are discussing. And the whole thing is that these guys came up with masks on them. And what we want is put down your mask. Nash was a super genius. His equilibrium theories are fundamental in multiple negotiations, multidimensional negotiations. But even Nash, who was a genius at Yale in organizing effective love life, he didn't do one thing. He didn't recognize that the word is fuzzy. There are lots of uncertainties there. And we are going to deal with this this afternoon. Talk about governance. If something is a fuzzy word, that surely is governance. And I think that many of us still struggle to grasp the concept what governance means. Oh, I have my hat, all right? Oh, okay. What governance means. I talked to my auntie the other day, and she's a pretty smart cookie. She asked me, "What are you doing, son?" I said, "I'm a governor." She said, "Where?" "I'm a governor in the World Water Council." And then she said, "Oh, this is a great career. When I was a kid back in Budapest, we also had a governor. She was blondie and nice and good looking. That's what you're doing?" I said, "Not exactly." So this shows that how fuzzy the languages are, where in many languages spoken amongst you or by you, I'm sure there are many where the definition of the word governance, particularly water governance, doesn't exist, and we still talk about it. When it comes to water, some may even argue that a special governance or a different governance is needed, depending on the different water bodies concerned. For instance, if you have an aquifer or a transboundary groundwater body, then you may need a completely different set of indicators and considerations and principles and whatnot. But this afternoon, we're not going into what governance is, because why should we spoil the fun, right, Kirsten? We will simply go with the idea that everybody is familiar with how to bake a good water governance cake. Amongst other ingredients, we need transparency. Do you see anything? Then we need participation. We need accountability. We need the rule of law. We need inclusiveness. And many other things which are equally fuzzy. I think we can all agree that the mix of these very tasty ingredients is what is needed to discuss and find effective solutions for sustainable water management of our precious water resources. But there are also a number of other very important ingredients that will enable us to make use of those ingredients. Let's call them the ingredients of the ingredients. If you want participation and transparency, for example, we also need trust, exchange of information, exchange of data, exchange of knowledge, seed investments, cooperation. But very often, what hampers or corrupts our efforts are the negative perceptions or stereotypes we all have towards other groups of people, or in this case, the stakeholders. How often do we stop ourselves from forming a friendship with someone because we know, or we think we know, or we think we know, she knows that we know, that this particular person probably won't react the way we want, or he or she won't cooperate with our way of thinking. There is this chain of misconceptions and stereotypes that often lies at the origin of many misunderstandings or feelings of mistrust leading to conflicts instead of cooperation. Ultimately, it's a vicious cycle which, of course, hampers the end result. I think it would be great, just for once, if we could come out from behind our masks and face our own stereotypes, the way we could change the negative or inconsistent preconceptions that others have about us. Or indeed, we might recognize that they are, in fact, true, but still face them and work on improving them through dialogue, 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 dialogue. We have this afternoon 5 magnificent actors from various fields who have bravely accepted to come here today and respond to the various negative stereotypes often held against them. We would like to turn this play into a commedia dell'arte by involving the audience. So if you like what they say, you say, whoa! If you don't, boo! And let's see whether indeed that communication, a dialogue, could develop. So first of all, I would like to start with, well, a pretty tricky thing, which is pretty touchy. Good guys, bad guys. That's the private sector. Here is the stereotype. The private sector is not interested in public good. It's only interested in increasing its own profit. It's not willing to share its data, nor does it want to cooperate with others for the good of the community. It has no interest in compensating for any damage it causes. Now we have Mr. Private Sector here by Thomas. Thomas?
Thank you. Is that all you can throw at me?
Take off your mask and tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
I will do that. Is that all you can throw at me in terms of stereotypes? I'm a bit disappointed. I thought business and private sector faced a much bigger amount of stereotypes. Some of you know me. I've been working in this sector for 10 years, and I'm very happy to say that, in my opinion, these stereotypes are no longer true. Business has changed. The private sector, be it companies or be it private operators, have seized the opportunities over the last 10 years, since, in my opinion, 2002, to choose to cooperate. In the beginning, it was very passive. We were completely confronted by these questions of, all you want is get our money and run away, or never share data. But over time, I think business has grasped the opportunity to start to engage in dialogue with other stakeholders. I can give 3 examples over the last years which have transformed the way business has interacted with shareholders and which have contributed to undermining these stereotypes, not completely, because I think they're still out there, but if you look at the work that has been done, for example, in setting up the Water Integrity Network, or bringing the Right to Water agenda forward into its conclusion in 2010, and also, for example, look at the way John Ruggie has developed his transnational cooperation principles, you must agree that these things came together in cooperation because people let down their stereotypes. This was only possible because business decided to step into the game and not remain at its side, afraid like everybody else, to engage. And this is also true because our environment has changed. The enabling environment for business has to take into account externalities, and we don't like it, but they are sometimes social and environmental. The way business is conducting itself these days forces business as a partner at the table, and there is no longer a choice to stay aside. The prisoner's dilemma is to cooperate. Huge challenges remain ahead, but I am convinced that if we work closer together, we can bridge those stereotypes down.
Thank you. Wow. Well, this is how the private sector gets away with murder. This is fantastic. I mean, congratulations. This is a great show. Now let's see the next stereotype, the youth. Young people. Youth have no experience. They're not prepared or interested in the environment and politics. These are just, you know, smoking, boozing, having fun. Kirsten, take off your mask.
Well, not only do I hear this stereotype frequently, but I've also experienced discrimination and prejudice because of it. So I'd like to take this opportunity to refute it. Young people are extremely involved and dedicated to social, political, and environmental causes. Further, those of us who have had the privilege of attaining high levels of education are enthusiastically bringing our ideas and talents into the workplace. We may lack what is often referred to as experience, but we bring fresh energy, innovative ideas, as well as a unique awareness of the world around us into all of our efforts and our interactions. With the world at our fingertips, we are teaching people how to go Gangnam Style, how to occupy Wall Street. We're showing people how to Harlem Shake, like those Facebookers, and how to sit in at Gezi Park in Istanbul. We can tweet, and Instagram until our fingers fall off, but we can also use these tools to spread images of injustices occurring in countries around the world. Despite all the added value that youth bring to the table, it's sad to know that these attributes can be perceived as deficiencies or even threats that need to be repressed. Youth and other marginalized groups are often excluded from decision-making processes, or even worse, it's made to look like we are included, even though our active participation is suppressed or even ignored. Let's take the example of composing a large panel for an event like Stockholm World Water Week. We put together our panel and we look at who is on it and we say, uh-oh, looks a little monochromatic and a little gender imbalanced. So let's add a woman, a young person, and a black person. And then I invite myself because, well, I'm a 3-in-1 deal. And so now I know why they're happy to have me here as well. Okay, just joking. Yes, so all jokes aside, what is the real meaning of participation? And what is the most effective way to involve our youth, women, people of various colors, religious backgrounds, and the range of demographic possibilities? Whether we accept it or not, youth are the key stakeholders of the future of our planet. The average age of the world population is 28, which also happens to be my age. And many countries make young people make up more than 50% of the citizens. Youth are the present and the future when it comes to promoting and maintaining stability of water, and we are the ones that have to deal with the consequences of choices made today. As a result of being exposed to the web, being in contact with people around the world all the time, it's more natural for us to think globally, look for solutions that may already be present somewhere else, and to jump up and create our own solutions. Youth add tremendous value to the workplace, society, and the world. And when this value is combined with years of experience, the years of experience that our seniors bring to the table in a cooperative rather than a competitive way, we all have the power to resolve the water crisis and the other crises that are facing our planet. We could have the power to change the world.
Well, pretty good job. But, yeah, the last sentence, you said, we could have the power to change the world. Kirsten, you do have the power to change the world. And the only gang that can change it is your generation. Boo or wow?
We're on it.
All right, now comes the toughie. Donor agencies, the nice guys. But occasionally, with all due respect, there are all kind of stuff that is happening. Let's see what. Donor agencies change their funding strategies along the theme of the day, to be politically correct, and countries have to formulate their needs to fit into ever-changing frameworks. Donor agencies are like an exclusive club. They make funds available for the good causes, but only a limited number of organizations can access them. Here we have the Global Environmental Facility and Astrid. Off! Shoot.
Theme of the day, you mean we fund this results-based, gender-sensitive, theory of change-based, log frame-based project proposals, and they fulfill my government priorities like climate, resilient, urban development in the Delta. And we don't fulfill, you were interested in energy and water security in the Transboundary Basin. Yeah, and next year, it's violence for my government. It's true, it's bad. But let me look for the application form. Number A. A1. Maybe you need A1. Theory of change, you should fill that out. Block frame. Oops, A frame. But look on the website, it's on there. You can do it. Okay. Sorry, maybe not time to joke. Donors try to do this actually with good intention. They try to focus funds so something adds up to a result. They try to get impacts on the ground, which, you know, everybody that applies for funds tries to do too. Tragedy is, one might admit, the focus areas of donors sometimes change faster than you can fix those problems in real life. And that's frustrating. Come on top of it, different application forms and different application results-based whatever kind of approaches that can be frustrating on both sides. So sometimes this seemingly shifting goalposts and how to apply and for what to apply can be frustrating. So there's a little bit to the stereotype, I guess. On the upside, this shortcoming is realized, and donors and funding agencies more and more move to bigger projects, longer time frames. And I was allowed to put a little bit a pitch in for the environment facility. We're providing financing, for example, in series of projects and longer time frames, so that there isn't this constant changing about, and there's a little bit more predictability of what's happening. Second stereotype, I know. Second one concerned, I see where it's coming from. Many agencies have the mandate to work with governments. That's frustrating, and civil society groups are complaining, and so are governments when funds often go, though, to civil society organizations and bypass the government. So there's things that donor agencies tries to balance. In addition, criteria to finance whom and make sure that things are actually happening on ground and people have, and agencies have the capacities to spend the funds how they were intended. One can see that donor agencies try to do that, and everybody would like to do it. But it ends up sometimes that, yes, the impression is it goes to the usual suspect. Big UN agencies, MDBs, big NGOs, glittery, new, accepted, beautiful river basin organizations that everybody knows, and not the new ones coming up. So, but there are movements. If it's the Green Climate Fund, if it's the Adaptation Fund, and even the GF tries to expand agencies that they're trying to give funds to, and they have just accepted 2 big NGOs to accept funds. So they're positive movements, but some of the stereotypes probably still stay there. Thank you.
Woo, wow. This wow, all right, okay. Well, thank you. Being humble and honest is a very precious quality in this environment. Now, this is gonna be really slippery. I'm losing my job soon, but that's all right. That's the next one. Policymakers. Policymakers only focus on short-term solutions, long enough just to ensure their re-election for the coming 4 years, if they are lucky. They cannot be called accountable for their decisions once they are no longer in power, so they cannot be trusted to do something good and lasting for the community. This is a tough one. But a real-life policymaker should know the answer, and we have here somebody who is at the rank of a minister, who just came out from a major conference that was held in Dushanbe, Tajikistan 2 weeks ago, or last week rather. Sultan, please.
Thanks. I recognize that this perception is very frequent and widespread, and I would add that it's not totally wrong and not entirely true. Who is policymaker? Who we are? we are very serious people.
Wow!
We are your representatives. You elected us and gave us mandate to work for you, for your well-being, for well-being of the community, not for ourselves. Many of us inspired by this and work hard to develop strategies, coherent policies, which allow to increase the lives of all. Of course, some of us sometimes develop policies with short-term focus. And sometimes some of us have to follow the legacies from our predecessors, which we are not agree, of course, but we should follow. Even we are not agree, even we did not participate in their preparation. So these are burdens that sometimes hinder our efforts, bringing in a new failure. So now the problem and its solution most probably lie in the same place. We cannot just say policymakers are selfish, because we unfortunately cannot change human nature. We could try to avoid having such people in power, yes, but that's even more complicated. But we can work to make the overall framework a bit better. We need to speak in institutional terms and add this aspect to governmental debate. How can we make institutions resilient to political fluctuation? How can we develop a vision that can last despite and beyond of partisan positions and conflicting interests? I'm not trying to talk my way out of the topic like a real politician. I'm not asking the questions in order to avoid answering minds. I think that the world is ready to be consulted on a global scale and at all levels, as we are experiencing with the global consultation for the future we want or the post-2015 agenda. The International Year of Water Cooperation could be also seen as a sort of supranational bridge that connects people and they contribute to building a global, responsible society. And I am happy to see that such issues are raised and debated. Thank you.
Thank you, Sultan. Wow, wow. Now this comes my baby. Here, listen to here. Come the next one, the science part. Thank you so much. This is the nearest to my humble heart. Well, of course, it's silly nonsense, but I have to read it. It's a part of my job description. So I do. I mean, you should have erased it. But anyway, scientists love to use jargon. They don't really care if the message is sent across. And most importantly, if it is well received. They enjoy listening to themselves. And they're too arrogant to change the way they communicate to the rest of the world. I mean, this is a silly thing, but I have to. So, you know, no, I disagree with that. But Kallis, what is your take on this?
Well, I think I find it very difficult not to accept actually this. And I'm talking on behalf of about 90% of the people seated here, because they are the scientists, they are the people who talk to themselves. But one thing I think we need to remember is that we need to do something about it. But we also need to ask ourselves, does everybody need to understand science? There are those who fear numbers. Should we bother them with actual scientific equations and scientific questions? Why don't we give them freedom to listen to things they find easy to listen to? Some of them like telling stories. You talk about numbers, they walk out of the room. So should we waste our time? Should we make their lives difficult?
He's right.
In a way, we need to remember that you don't have to know everything. Some of you took fish during lunchtime. Did you ask yourself who actually caught this fish from the lake? Who cooked it? Who actually brought it from the lake to the kitchen here? You just consumed the fish. So why do you want to know everything? Why don't you know actually how the fish tastes on the plate and leave the detail to the others? I think we need to remember that we only need to cooperate and focus on the final the solution. If you have to know every detail, then you might actually lose the bigger picture. But on a lighter note, I think we have learned our lessons as scientists that we need to actually communicate in the language others understand. And now that we are beginning to listen to these voices, I think we need to take action so that we can live longer. And I still now see some light at the end of the tunnel, and all of you seated here, I do hope that you have got the message. So this World Water Week, take this message home. Don't communicate to yourselves, communicate to the people who need this information. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I have to admit that, you know, scientists are wonderful people because they normally smoke big fat Cuban cigars, then they enjoy red wine, and they talk about partial differential equations. And it is a great people, except nobody listens to them. Because they have no idea. We have no idea how to communicate the simple messages. We have no idea, except talking our tohuva bohu, what nobody understands. Here we have now a communicator who is a very resilient person because she's coming from the Stockholm Resilience Institute. Anna, how can we make this connection? Come in. Oh, there you are. Hi. Oh, oops, my stick. Have a seat.
Well, yes, I got the really easy question. I am, if you want to move, we've been talking about the dynamics between conflict and cooperation, and moving towards cooperation and finding the space for cooperation. That's my passion. I get to work with that every now and then, and I want to a little bit reframe what we're doing, just by saying that it makes perfect sense to put on a mask or look through a mask at somebody and see a stereotype, or even enter a stereotype. It makes perfect sense. Because there are several situations. If I feel unsafe, if the task is not clear, if I'm actually in a situation where the situation is about conflict, it's not about cooperation, then it makes sense to both be in a stereotype and see others like that. So what I want to say, my key message here is that if you observe it, if you observe that you see a stereotype, or if others see you like that, then it tells you something really important about the situation, and that could be a key to finding that space, and to think about how can I, if I'm a facilitator or a designer of the process, how can I make people more safe? How can I establish relations? How can I connect to the issue better? And if I'm a participant, then I might have the opportunity just to voice this. We're stuck. We are seeing these things. We are not feeling good about it. And just this opening to voice it and to say that we're seeing these things might be an opportunity to learn and to change the process. And so what I wanted to say also is, like, we need to understand where we are. We need to understand if we are in this conflict situation or if we are more towards cooperation, because if we don't understand it, then we are very naive about dialogue and about participation. Then we might invite people in false conditions and trick them into things that they shouldn't spend their energy on. So this is the thing that I wanted to take, the message I want you to take, that don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, the stereotype, but it tells you something, and look at that.
Thank you, Anna. This was a very sobering message that takes us to what the ancient Greeks used to do at the end of the play, at the end of the act, the catharsis. What is the morale of Act 2? Where are we now? What is the big message that we wanted to project to you and into you? Perhaps they could be summarized in a few points, which our actors brought out brilliantly. First of all, that perhaps to recognize that all of our characters who played a valuable role today, they want to enhance water security and avoid water crisis and conflict. that is to be replaced by cooperation. Water connects and it doesn't divide. That is a major message. The key, it seems to me, is to synergize our strengths rather than demonize our weaknesses. Communication, communication, communication. That's what in the coming years we have to do, a great deal more. We have to improve the communication amongst all actors. These guys communicated with one another beautifully, but do we communicate amongst others the way we should? As communication is the basis of any meaningful dialogue. All stakeholders should make an effort to see beyond each other's mask as they have taken them off. Each stakeholder should make an effort to diminish the negative perception he, she projects to the outside world. Participation. We should reflect on the real meaning of what participation means. We hope that this is not perceived as a series of tick, 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 tick boxes. We indeed need to make a real effort to empower different groups in our society and make inclusion the norm rather than the afterthought or reaction. Accept that different players might have different agendas, go for the Nash equilibrium, and different interests, and recognize that these are not necessarily bad, they're just different. So how to find the Nash equilibria? That's the point. When it comes to combining efforts to formulate policies for good water governance, we should really avoid falling into the trap of stereotyping and keep our minds open all the time. Cooperation begins when we take down these barriers and take off our mask. Because if you have that mask, there is no cooperation and no dialogue and no communication and no hope and no chance. Without a structured global governance in place, we shall not survive the biggest challenge, that is living and coexisting together. This is what we will see in the next act that will be devoted to a little flying thing. And thank you very much for Act 2.
Okay, we're on to Act 3, the butterfly effect. Well, we'll come to the butterfly effect later. The butterfly effect is kind of where we're going to end. We're going to start with another game story. We need to come back to this question that we posed right at the beginning of the play. Can we ever find a happy ending to this play? In order to do this, we really need to describe another game theory. This time we're going to look at the tragedy of the commons. We mentioned that a little bit earlier, which is probably the best known public goods game of all. We're getting away from prisoners, we're getting into the public goods game. The tragedy, as I'm sure most of you will know, was first referred to by Garrett Hardin as long ago as 1968. It has a fair pedigree. And he illustrated this tragedy of what happens to commonly owned resources, the environment, you might say, using the example of pastures, pastures that are open to all, common pastures. And he said every livestock owner on that pasture had an interest in protecting the pasture for the long-term good of his livestock, protect it from overgrazing, which is what everybody would be tempted to do. But he also said that if they didn't trust each other, then they had a personal interest not in protecting that pasture, like commons, but in overgrazing it grabbing what they can, grabbing what advantage they could take from that pasture before the inevitable destruction of it, before it turned, and we were talking about the late 60s here, everybody was worried about desertification, before it turned to desert. And this illustrates our chronic inability to sustain commonly owned resources, the ones that everybody is free to use, but alas, just as free to abuse. Another example of this, well, water is globally is an example of this, but let's look at groundwater and the chronic overpumping of groundwater around the world. If there is no trust, and you have a pump, and you have a farm, you take what you can, because you reckon it's all going to go. Everybody else is overpumping. It's all going to go. And that is the tragedy of the water commons. But I think it boils down ultimately to a matter of trust, just as in the prisoner's dilemma earlier. Personal interest, when there is trust, is quite different from personal interest when there is no trust. Some see this whole issue as a reason for privatizing the resources, because then everybody knows what they own and they'll protect it. But commons can be governed to create trust, surely. There have been many well-known attempts, theoretically, to promote good governance and management of shared resources. Among the most well-known is Elinor Ostrom's work, developing the concept of a common pool, common property resource. And one objective of this conference is to find ways for us to live in a water-secure world, where we respect those commons, where water security is defined by the UN. Water has a rather long definition, but I'll give it to you. The capacity of a population to safeguard sustainable access to adequate quantities of and acceptable quality of water for sustaining livelihoods, human well-being, and socio-economic development, for ensuring protection against waterborne pollution and water-related disasters, and for preserving ecosystems in a climate of peace and political stability. That's quite a big ask, but surely we can find common means for doing that. Water is a commons like none other. It underpins each and every human activity. It's essential for all ecosystems. And failing to manage it properly will result in a fatal loss for the whole world, a real tragedy. We know this, we're grappling with this. And we know too that we as humans can be selfish beings, and the temptation to defect and to take advantage of the system, especially systems of commons, is always present. But we are also social beings, and we sometimes forget that. So the question now is, why should we care? Why should we bother changing our sometimes selfish attitudes to cooperate with others? What creates trust? And this is the moment to take a video tour. We'll start the video now, and then we'll come back to the butterfly effect.
Autumn 2011. Thailand is hit by one of the biggest floods in more than a century. The long-awaited monsoon resembled a tsunami. Here I observe one more time that climate change is not a hypothesis nor a theory. It is a reality. Millions of people suffered from damages. 15,000 industries were affected. 12% of cultivated land was flooded. Entire families, flooded for weeks, had to relocate on the roofs of their houses. Regional catastrophe, global consequences. 60% of the hard drives of the world are manufactured here. The world electronics industry is paralyzed. Losses for car manufacturing are huge. Thailand is the main exporter of rice worldwide. 30% of crops were lost. The skyrocket rise of prices affected the lives of tens of millions of Asians and Africans. The Temple of Ayutthaya, the ancient capital founded in 1350, was flooded for the first time ever. The canal system that had protected it until then was left abandoned. The dams constructed on the river that crosses Bangkok couldn't hold the rising waters anymore. Human beings have forgotten that they cannot always control nature.
Here I think we see the interconnectedness, the interdependence, and perhaps the surprise in how things are connected. Who would have guessed that a climatic event in Thailand would suddenly have an effect on the hard drive market around the world? Some things are just pretty much unpredictable. We are probably more interdependent than we've ever been before as a species, you might say. Whether we like it or not, our actions ultimately have an impact on millions of others around the world, sometimes in very unexpected ways. The commons, indeed, are now global. When we talk about commons, we don't think so much as Garrett Hardin did about a piece of pasture somewhere. We're thinking about the global commons. We're thinking about climate change and the atmosphere. And what happens in Thailand is no longer just their concern. It's everybody's business. And if we don't cooperate purely out of good and humanitarian will, then we'll have to do so simply for our own survival and cooperate at a global level. We need to build systems of governance for the new global commons. That, after all, is what many people here are thinking and talking about doing. The question is always how. And that, I think, does bring us to this final idea. You've seen the butterfly flying away behind us. Chaos theory and the butterfly effect. The idea that small forces can have big effects if the timing is right. That the flutter of a butterfly's wing can cause a typhoon halfway around the world, and we often refer to these effects in a kind of negative sense. We think of the bad things that can happen unexpectedly. But the butterfly effect is essentially a neutral phenomenon. It can, it's unpredictable, but it can be bad as well as good. So positive effects. Perhaps the positive effects of human ideas we should think about here. The way that in the modern interconnected world, human ideas can shoot around the world in no time at all, suddenly get picked up. That could be a force for bad if you're a corporation that gets caught up in a storm about some reputational issue, but it also can be good. It could be good ideas going around the world. Sometimes they can be as powerful as typhoons. And I'd like you to listen now to a conversation between Lesha and Maggie from the Steering Committee Butterfly Effect NGO Coalition. They're going to talk about the amazing effects that a small but positive flutter of a butterfly's wing can have on all our lives. Go for it.
Maggie, ik snap er helemaal niks van. Wat die mensen hier allemaal hebben staan praten, ik snap er... What? Oh, I'm sorry, Maggie. I keep forgetting I have to use your language to make us discuss something, Well, we were very lucky, actually, There was this program where they trained a group of women to train others. And they came to our village and actually taught us a little bit of the other languages, so at least we can discuss something with each other. But yeah, it would be much easier if we had one language, right? But anyway, what I wanted to tell you is this amazing story about this village in Tanzania. You can only get there by motorcycle going uphill. It's on the foot of the Kilimanjaro. It's called Miteni. And what happened there is really amazing. There were like these 3-4 women that experienced a problem with their water. And they had no clue why it was wrong. They just knew it was wrong. And they didn't know what to do about it. But what they did know is how to get help. So through all kinds of networks, they found some friends to help them. And the amazing result is that they actually got themselves a very, very good water system. But because they got that, they got so much status in their community that the community actually let one of the women stand for election in the council. Wow. Which had really never, ever happened in their region. And the village collected money to send 2 of the girls to the capital to get an education on the ICT. Can you imagine? Just because they started with a little water project?
Went all the way, education, elected. I thought that was a rumor, actually.
No, it's real.
It actually worked.
It actually worked.
Okay, so it's true. You don't develop people. Sorry. You can't develop people. They develop themselves, but as you said, with a little help from a friend. And look what it does. I also heard about a woman who started a women and training center, and they went around and got neighboring villages and a whole group of them to go to that training. It's actually happening next month. And it shows you, if you educate the 70% of the women who take care of approximately 55% of water and agriculture, what a huge effect that will have.
Oh, it is amazing.
Yeah, and in some cases, it has been proven it has a 12% impact on the economy because women are working into the labor market also. Women being educated has a proven ripple effect. In their families, on the next generation, leads to economic activities, investments in secondary schools, education for women and girls yields especially high dividends. Sounds like magic, right?
Well, you know, another example. What I thought was also really amazing was this other small group. Women again.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh goodness, they're everywhere.
Of people starting to protest against illegal sand mining. Now, I don't know about people here if you know what that means, but if you have just seen the video on the tsunami, one of the effects is that everybody wants to rebuild at the same time. They want cement, they want sand. And where do they get it? Illegally out of a river, which will then be severely damaged. So these women started to protest against it, which meant that they were actually physically abused. They were beaten up. The good side of that was that the press got hold of it, because bad news is news, right? So it got in the news, and that made that those women got support all over the country, and started with a radio program every week in the local languages, telling people 5 minutes every week about something that has to do with water.
Yeah, wow.
Their government changed their policy on sand mining. It took about 3 years, but it happened.
Makes me think of another story. I thought you were going to talk about the Nile Basin, because people working together and trying to make their governments change the way they're going about it really makes me think about this amazing civil society initiative in 11 countries who are talking to each other and making progress while governments don't want to talk to one another.
Yeah, that's good stuff, right? Yeah. It's local communities that live around the Nile Basin, 11 countries. It starts with that they have to find a common language and a common goal among themselves, which they managed to do. They got themselves an organization called the Nile Basin Discourse, and that basically means keep talking. And every time something happens, and we all know about the big conflict going on about a dam somewhere.
Ooh, bad word.
Right. So what they did is actually talk to each other, agreed on what was the real story behind it, and then started talking to the government, saying, hey guys, if we can talk to each other, you can talk to each other. And they're actually doing great work, going from their local village on the river to the regional basin level.
These stories, and there's so many other amazing stories, they really give me hope. I mean, I believe that is the key. Like the ripples of water, if you go from local to national to regional to global and think in watershed terms, growing from the ground and mainstreaming towards one objective, one goal dedicated to water, then we can really make a difference. After all, we all want a water-safe world for ourselves, for our nature, for the world today, but also for our future and our children's future, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and if you say it like that, it's so easy, huh?
Yeah.
It sounds so easy. But if we reach out, if we work together, if we keep talking, it brings down barriers. It creates trust, because the better I get to know you, the better I know how we can work together and what I can expect. And in the end, it goes from competition to understanding what we all can contribute and stop mistrusting, but find a common ground and a common goal. And that will get us places, for sure.
Well, wow. Thank you. Put that way so simply, so clearly, I understand better all these discussions and why we need to work together towards a common vision and a goal, a water goal. We can strive for and work with, and in doing that, we will be able to have all the different sectors where water is essential interact together in order to cooperate and implement solutions. What do the academics think about that, Fred?
They don't understand the human content of what you're saying.
Then we have to keep trying, Fred.
They'll do the hydrology, but they would, and maybe they shouldn't. They won't understand the human dimension, the human butterfly effect. That's what changes things. And I think that's what we come back to. It's trying to turn what we talk about here, the tragedy of the commons, on its head, to try and change the collapse of commons, collapse of trust, into an opportunity to find common cause, common interests, and the means of governments to sustain them. And that works through people. That way we can have not a tragedy of the commons, but maybe a triumph of the commons. And I think that's what we need to aim for. If you're done, I'm going to finish with my last quote, which comes, it's a passage from a book by Martin Novak, professor at Harvard University, called The Super Cooperators. Here it is. I'd recommend it to anybody. It kind of encapsulates the human side of what we've been saying here. Many problems, he said, that challenge us today can be traced back to a profound tension between what is good and desirable for society as a whole and what is good and desirable for an individual. That conflict can be found in global problems such as climate change and pollution and resource depletion and poverty and hunger and overexploitation, you name it. The biggest issues of all, saving the planet and maximizing the collective lifetime of our species, Homo sapiens, cannot be solved, he says, by technology alone. They require novel ways for us to work in harmony. If we are to continue to thrive, we have but one option. We now have to manage the planet as a whole. If we are to win the struggle for existence and avoid a precipitous fall, there is no choice but to harness this extraordinary creative force, this human force. We now have to refine and to extend our ability to cooperate. We must become familiar with the science of cooperation. Yeah, scientists can get back in here. Now, more than ever, and these are his final words, the world needs super cooperators. We're going to end on that in this act.
Sometimes I wasn't really sure we were going to make it this far. Give them a round of applause to our performers. The question, however, is, have we reached a happy ending yet? And we're going to ask you to be engaged in a moment. I think we've asked the right questions, and that's perhaps the first step in getting the right answers. So I think it's quite important to get the answers right. Now, why is that, you might ask? Well, we as a human society have sort of pushed ourselves into a corner where we don't have a lot of choices, and we must get the answers right. It's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of survival for us. My name is Zafar Adil. I work for a funny organization called United Nations University, which is not a university because we don't have professors or students. And sometimes I wonder whether we even act like a UN. But it works pretty sweetly for me. I can do pretty much anything I want, and I get away with it. So, as you know, we live in an age where even the video games have become interactive. So we thought we would make Act number 4 also interactive and let the audience decide whether we actually have reached happy ending. So I'll be inviting one or two of you up on the stage in a moment to share with you what you thought was the happy ending. I can tell you what I took away from the 3 acts. The first act talked about the strategies, and in fact we found out that choosing to cooperate at the end of the day is perhaps the best strategy. In the second act, we looked at various stereotypes, and we found out that actually breaking through stereotypes can lead us to find new ways of communication, new ways of dialogue. And in the third act, we looked at the extraordinary creative forces that we have embodied in us, and how we can release those by working in novel ways, cooperating with each other. So that's what I took. I don't know what you took away from this act, but do I have one or two volunteers who would like to come up here on the stage and talk about what's your impression of the 3 acts? And is there a happy ending in sight? So who's going to be the brave volunteer? I have one. Yeah, please come up here. Yes, we'll ask you to put a hat on. Yeah, you can come this way.
There you go.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I was so jealous that I wasn't invited to be in the play that I can't believe I get to be at the microphone at this moment. I think this is one of the most profound things I've ever seen at a Seaweed conference. I've been to about 5. I've been to many science conferences. And I think in a way you can't know what you have taken away from this play because it is so different than the experience that we have in each of the sessions that we go to. Because in each of the sessions, we each speak sort of the same language, relatively speaking, which is why we chose to go to the session. So for whoever was the creative force behind this event and pulling the people together. I think what I take away from it is that, like the butterfly effect, it will have an effect for many months to come in the way we each think of what we do personally and how we can change how we do what we do personally to communicate more effectively, because the deepest part of all of this is everyone cares about the same subject, which is we all have put all our life and effort and work and talents into trying to figure out how to solve the problem of water protection. And so for us to work together in a more open and vital and emotional way is a very great gift that you have given us, and I thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Thank
you very much. This is great. So, who else is another brave soul?
Thank you so much.
Okay, yes, you, ma'am.
Come this way because it's easier. Yeah, I think so. Thank you. Thank you.
Please introduce your name and what you
it's
think
Iman
is the happy
Abdelal.
ending.
I come from Lebanon. And I have one message that I took from your play, and thank you very much. It's that if you have love in our heart and we work with love, there is no problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's amazing how in a very short time you can arrive at really profound findings about who we are, how we interact with each other, and how we can reach the next level of interaction. Please don't go away. So may I invite the performers to join back? Let me very briefly introduce each of the performers. Prisoner 1, Tom Su, International Water Resource Associate. Prisoner 2, Aman Karar, Water Research Commission of South Africa. And of course we had our external thinker, David Rand from University of Yale. Private sector, Thomas van Bergen from Aquafed. Youth, Christine Conti from IGRAC. Policymaker, Sultan Rahimov of Ministry of Land, Reclamation and Water Resources of Tajikistan. Donor agencies, Astrid Hillers of Global Environment Facility. Scientist, Kalist Tindimugaya of Ministry of Water and Environment, Uganda. Communicator, Anna Emelin, Stockholm Resilience Center. Butterfly 1 and Butterfly 2, Lesha Whitmer and Maggie White. Butterfly Effect NGO Coalition. Voiceover, Stephen Downey. And our wonderful crew, the ultimate troubleshooter, Anna Noren of FAO. Video and graphics wizards, Giovanni Merla and Marco Tonsini. And we created an original soundtrack by David Ketchy. Our stage director is Stephanie Nino from UN Water. And our playwright, Lucilla Minelli of UNESCO IHP.
just like to thank the moderators very much, because without you this wouldn't be possible. So thanks Adil, Aaron, Fred, and Andres. Thank you so much.